Hello and welcome to Five Writers, 5 Minutes, where five children's authors share their top writing tips. Tristan Bancks is taking a bit of a break, so for the next few weeks, Sue Whiting is taking his place. I'm Leanne Tanner.
I'm Sarah Armstrong.
I'm Zanny Louise.
I'm Sue Whiting.
And I'm Deborah Bella.
Today we are talking about the dreaded info dump. Nothing puts me off a story more quickly than when the actual story, the action stops and the author drops in a whole lot of stuff that might be world building, or it might be information. It might be something that happened before that they think we really need to know. I really hate this sort of stuff. How do we avoid it? Sarah, how do you avoid the information dump?
Well, I confess that in my first draft, I tend not to avoid it too much because in my first draft, I'm just trying to get the info down, and I know later I'll come back and spread it around and weave it in. And that is really often the job in my second draft, is figuring out what information I need the reader to know. It's like, what exactly do they need to know at this point about this person, whether it's a bit of backstory or what they're wearing or what time of day it is, what the season is, where they are, what's just happened the day before, all that stuff, whatever they need. I might then on a separate bit of paper just write it all down. Everything all the info, I just dump it all on a page, and then I figure out how to weave it in. So, and then instead of like saying they're cold, I might just sort of show that they're shivering, or instead of saying it's just rained, I'll have them walking through puddles. So I try and weave it into the action. They brush against the west bush or whatever. And I also think about kind of spacing it out, like I might say, oh, it's 3 years since he's been to his auntie's place, and then not say why. And then a bit later, make it clear that there was a big disagreement 3 years ago. And then a bit later, I reveal that it was his mum and his aunt had a big fight over a particular thing. So I try and weave it in through action, through stuff happening, and I try and stretch it out, because it's good sometimes to have those gaps in information, because the reader wants to keep reading to find out what that is. So I'd say that's my main approach. Info dump it first and then weave it through later.
I really like that. And also, I think I do the same. Your first draft definitely has more info dump than your second or your consequent draft. And that's your job in the rewriting process, is to show rather than to tell. I kind of think of it a bit like Wikipedia page versus story, because, your Wikipedia page has all the information that you need about the character and the setting and the world. I think it's just about really being in the scene with the characters. So I just try and be there with them and, hear the sound of the traffic. And like Sarah's saying, it's about the sensations of the physical environment through the character's body, rather than explaining where they are. It tends to be a little bit boring, but there are times in your story, particularly a longer story, where you will have a bit of summary. Sometimes you do have to sort of gloss over quite a big chunk of information, but it's just about keeping it as minimal as possible. And in those subsequent drafts, wherever possible, you can show it through the action and through the conversations and the interactions of the characters. That's usually preferential. How about you, Sue? What's your feeling about this?
Oh, I totally agree with both of you, because it's that as the writer, we have to know everything. That's our job. We have to know all that backstory, what led the characters to this point in the story. All that information is our job to know. But our job is also to make sure that we decide what the reader needs to know. And so when I think about backstory, I'm very indulgent in my first draft. You sort of need to sort of just get it down there so you don't forget it, I think. And then it's really, do my readers need to know this? It's on a need to know basis. So I had that sort of thought in my head, need to know basis. And often they don't. But it's not until you've told the whole story that you sometimes realize what things are really important for them to know and what things aren't. And I think of it in terms of character information. I often try to think it this way, because I spend a lot of time developing my characters. I do lots of notebooking and all that kind of thing. And so, I know everything about that character, what drove them to that point, what drives them, what motivates them, what they love, why they love it, all those kind of things. But I don't need to tell my readers all of that, because I think of it all as their DNA. It's what makes them them. So if I know them and they carry that on their backs like it's their DNA, then I know how they act and react and think and feel. And then that is the way that you'll show a lot of that information. So that's one of my little things that I tend to do, is think of it as the DNA of the story or the DNA of the character. And that way it's a little bit more seamless in showing it, because you're not trying to tell it all the time.
Oh, I love that.
I love that, Sue, because we do need to know way more than our reader.
Yeah.
And I remember J.K. Rowling, when she was, writing and forming Harry Potter in her head, she knows way more about those characters than then goes into that final book. And I think we need to think about that. But I think the info dump in the first draft, I agree with you all. You put it in, and then our job with our editing is to cut back. And Sue, I think you're totally right. Sometimes we don't need to say it. Sometimes we go, oh no, our readers must know this. But the thing is, readers are very, very smart. And also, sometimes I will find myself do a whole big paragraph about, so when she was little, her dad left her and her mum, blah, blah, blah. And I just think, no. And that can be in first draft, that's all right. But if I do feel like I want my readers to know something, I think, right, instead of just a big paragraph explaining that when he was a little kid, I think, how else can we find out about this? So maybe they might find a little diary entry, or maybe they'll find a letter, or maybe they'll find a scrapbook, or there might be a newspaper article. Because sometimes of course, your characters do need to know that bit of information. So instead of just an info dump into a paragraph, think about a clever way. They might overhear a conversation. They might have a character slip up and go, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. So that's the other thing too. Your readers do need to know stuff, but we need to be clever about how we then let our readers know that stuff, instead of one big block of text in a paragraph.
Yeah. Look, I think of it as going to a foreign country for the first time. First time we go to a foreign country, we don't learn everything about that country all at once. We figure out stuff in dribs and drabs, like we might read a little bit about it. We might find out a bit about the geography and the history and amazing buildings and the religion. And we're a bit lost for a while when we're in that country. But that's okay, because we learn about stuff as we need them, and as we need to learn stuff. And that's how I think of a book, sort of learning about stuff only as we need to learn that stuff. And so like pretty much everybody has said, I think about, what does the reader absolutely need to know at this point? And am I really sure that they need to know all of that? Am I just sort of being self-indulgent here? And can I fit it into a conversation, or have a character see something? But I need to do it so that it fits organically into the book. So it's not this big clunky lump that falls into the book, and that it doesn't stop the story. The story keeps moving while I'm providing this information. Yeah. So like everybody else here, I like to drop this stuff in a bit at a time, and a bit by bit, and advancing the story at the same time. I hope that is helpful. This is a great way of showing your story more organically, of avoiding those great lumps of information. We are 5 Writers, 5 Minutes. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.